Thanks, Shamika. I wanted to get to some of the more kind of nebulous problems here in our last few minutes of the show, and I wanted to ask each of you, and Dr. Byers, we'll start with you. We've talked about a lot of issues that can lead to homelessness. What are some of the issues people might not think of that can be causal factors to having inadequate housing or leading yourself into a situation where you're just one extra bill away from being in a really bad way?
One of the things I think many people don't realize are the number of veterans who are homeless, and there are complex issues related to how they become homeless. Some of it has to do with maybe not adequate treatment of post-traumatic stress that many of them experience, maybe not an adequate kind of support system once they've been in the service, and coming back, reentry can be an issue for many veterans. Having a job that can pay enough to support you and your family. So I think that one thing that many people don't realize is many people who are homeless are working. And they are working at jobs that don't pay enough.
The underemployed.
Well, yes, some of them, and some of them may be working at the jobs that they can do, but those jobs don't pay enough for them to support themselves or themselves and their families in the housing that is available in that community. We have people who work in Bloomington who live several counties over because they can't afford to live in Monroe County. So there are, and unfortunately many of those folks are vulnerable to becoming homeless, because if their car breaks down and they can't make it to their job, then they could be fired, and then what happens?
Sue, what are you seeing in Bartholomew County? Some of these same symptoms?
Some of the same issues, veterans, people coming back from the Middle East and not having a family, it's non-existent, losing their homes, some foreclosure issues as well. Mm-hmm. We're seeing a lot of that. And, you know, I have people tell me that they are one paycheck away from becoming homeless. That's how close many people are in our communities of having this happen to them.
And Dan, it sounds like conversations you and I have had about the loss of township level positions, elected positions, as far as can we serve these people if we don't have people who are in positions like yours, because they are the boots on the ground to deal with homelessness on a local level.
Correct. For the people who don't understand what townships do, we do an emergency assistance. It's an emergency assistance, not a maintenance program. We conducted a client survey, took 2 years worth of applications, and our results were really stunning. We assumed the people that most needed our emergency assistance were low-income housing complexes, people on the programs, but the programs aren't adequate. What we found for Perry Township, Bloomington, is overwhelmingly our clients that are at that edge are from what are called affordable housing. You get tax breaks to build rent-controlled apartments, but that means by definition those people can't afford anything else. So they have no resources. A little trigger, a little episode on a trip to the emergency room that you got to pay cash or something, they can't pay their affordable rent. They're immediately at this precipice. Either you intervene then, or 2 weeks later you intervene with those people on the streets, because apartment complexes aren't in the business of social services. It's just counterintuitive where homeless families come from sometimes. You know, you see people in very dire straits in very nice housing.
You mentioned the term affordable housing, which is kind of a designed term to explain the living situation for a lot of people who are underemployed or don't have a lot of disposable income. And I wondered if that is emblematic of a societal stigma in some ways that might be hard to escape if you're homeless. If you're once homeless and someone finds out, they don't know anything else about you, but they once find out that you're homeless at some point in your past, does that stick with people longer than it should in some ways? And does that idea that you were once living in affordable housing, for instance, come back to people such that there is this cycle that's hard to get out of?
Solving homeless issues for homeless individuals or people in homelessness is far harder than intervening. if you can get that intervention, and I think that's best practices, what we all want to be best practices, not let them hit the street. Just honestly in Bloomington, to take someone off the street to get them in suitable housing is easily $1,500 per household for 1 month. That's a tremendous investment. It might be $300 to $500 just to keep them there. So, you know, we look at it differently. We really don't want to see homeless people. We want to see people before they hit that level because funds are limited. One of the ironies of President Obama's cuts is he's proposing cuts in affordable housing and income-based housing, but increasing funding for homeless shelters, which sounds counterproductive.
Other thoughts on ending the cycle of homelessness?
Well, I just want to add, you know, President Obama is suggesting that we raise homeless shelters, but they're also doing a mandate that we put 40% of our monies from emergency shelter into prevention, because we do know that it's much less expensive to prevent an eviction and somebody being homeless than to actually put them in a shelter. So.
And I think the psychological damage, as you kind of mentioned, that can be done to people who, in this country, unfortunately, you have to lose almost everything before you qualify for our public assistance programs. You can't have very many resources. And so that, to me, reinforces that notion of I'm less than, I'm poor, and psychologically it becomes hard to break out of that, but also monetarily it becomes hard to break out of that. You know, once you've lost all your resources, where's the rent deposit? The maybe 2 months deposit you have to put down to get into an apartment. How are you going to save that up on the limited wage that you have and still pay for your food, your utility, you know, all of those kinds of things? So when you spiral down to homelessness, it becomes very, very difficult to sort of come out of that kind of cycle in a very positive kind of way without a lot of help from a lot of social service agencies and a lot of, you know, other kinds of supportive volunteers who may be around.
Well, I'm sorry we have to leave it there, but unfortunately we do. But my thanks to all three of you for being here and for offering these thoughts and for, you know, giving us a chance to look at the issue in more depth. So my thanks to you. My thanks also to my co-host this evening, Shamika Neely, on her maiden voyage of InFocus in front of the camera. Nice job and thanks.
Thank you, Stan.
Please do send us your questions for our next InFocus program. You can send those to infocus@indiana.edu. You can also leave a comment or see portions of this program by visiting our website, indianapublicmedia.org/infocus. Thanks to all of you who watched and listened, and have a nice night.
Production support for InFocus is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922, with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. Hoosier Energy, providing electricity for central and southern Indiana electric cooperatives and their member customers. Information at hepn.com, and by viewers like you. Thank you.